Okay.
You can talk about whatever you want.
Oh, wow. But today, because I was writing about Grandma Bertha,
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother. Bertha Virgin, she was Bertha Wangler, was her maiden name. And I stayed at their house a lot when I was a kid
Mm-hmm.
on Eggleston. No, I don't want to read, well, I'll just use it for notes. They lived on 118th and Eggleston in Roseland. That don't mean nothing to you, but anybody else from Chicago would know. It's on the south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
And of course, back then there was still a lot of empty lots and not a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
like there is now. But they owned a house right on an alleyway. Well, the alleyways were like sort of streets. They were clean and kept. And the side of the house, the alley ran up, and there was a garage behind. So because he drove a truck, a flatbed truck, sort of, not big ones like they have nowadays. And he delivered ice in the summer to keep your food cool,
Mm-hmm.
and coal in the winter to keep your house warm. Back then, we didn't have all this automatic plug-it-in stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, he always delivered ice in the summer, and they always have these little chips of ice on the bed, and I could climb up on a truck and eat the ice. But he took me to the ice house once, and that was a real experience for me, being about probably 4 or 5.
Wow.
This building was about probably 4 stories high, and the top had all kinds of louvers coming down. You could hear the water running in there to keep things cool. Now, how did they get the ice? Well, they would go in the summer, the winter time, and cut big blocks of ice, like maybe 6, 8 feet long, and 2 feet squares. And these big bricks of ice, they bring them, pack them in sawdust, put them on the train, bring them down to that place, which there was a railroad tracks living right along Halsted Street. This would have been around at 120th and Halsted. It was there the last time. It was dilapidated, but it was still there.
Oh, wow.
But he took me there, and they just, this room is full of big, giant blocks of ice packed in sawdust. And all the melting water went up and around somehow, I don't know, to keep the place cool.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But they also, so in the wintertime, they had a card, and you put it in your front window. And when the iceman went by, it said 10, 15, 20, whatever. How many pounds of ice did you want?
Oh.
And then I got his ice pick, and up there is his ice tongs that he used to wear, like a leather saddle on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And they chip off the mount, put it on his shoulder, and go take him up. Charge him for the weight, and that's it. So, but he was too good of a guy, because he always had a little book, and he kept track of who owed him what.
Mm-hmm.
So then when he died in 39, Grandma went to try to collect some of this money, and they said, no, we don't owe it to you.
Oh.
We owe it to him, and he's dead. So she had a really hard time.
Is the book still around?
I don't know. I really don't. She probably threw it out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. If anybody would have it, Artie, and Artie's been dead about 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I often wonder what happened to her papers, or naturalization papers, and all that stuff. Anyways, back to this house. Grandpa liked poplar, Lombardy poplars, long, tall, thin trees, and he liked those.
Mm-hmm.
So when he planted one, he would just a big hole, and there were still horses around then too. And he'd go and collect some horse manure from somebody that had a horse, put in that hole, run that water in there, run the hose until the hole was full of water, and then he would put boards across it and let that all soak in the ground. So he's in the midst of planting one of these trees,
Mm-hmm.
and Artie, being about probably around 10 or 12 then,
Mm-hmm.
he comes plopping around the lawn, right down in it, because it didn't look like a hole. Oh, Grandma was mad. She was really mad because she had to clean Artie and his clothes and everything else. So that's how he planted his Lombardy trees. And in that alley, we had the Rags and O-Line man. He had a horse and a wagon,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd come down the alley and he'd ring his bell, and he'd say, Rags and O-Line, and the people in the houses, my grandma included, they always saved everything. The newspapers, rags, anything, and he would buy them. And they went into, from what I heard, was they made paper out of them.
Really?
Yep. Rag paper is very expensive now.
Is it really thick kind of
I
material?
don't know. I haven't seen any. I don't know. But yeah, that's where newspapers, they a couple pennies a pound.
Wow.
Yeah, and and back then, a loaf of bread only cost probably around 10 cents.
Oh, wow.
And
So you didn't have to sell much to get some food on the table.
right, that's something Grandma always cooked good. She always managed a good table. I'll tell you that. But she used to have this. I would like to have that a long iron thing, that she would sharpen it.
A knife sharpener?
Yep. She'd butcher her own meat, and there was always a strop on the wall, which is a long piece of leather,
Mm-hmm.
and that's for sharpening blades.
Leather sharpens blades? I didn't know that.
Strop, yeah, a strop.
Strong.
That's how they used to sharpen straight blades for shaving.
Oh, wow.
I can remember my grandpa doing that, getting it good and sharp. I don't know how it works, but it does work. They did it. And then one day I come home, or I was outside for some reason, and I came in, and Grandma and Artie, by this time my grandpa had died.
Mm-hmm.
He died on December 7th, which is my grandmother's birthday. Now we're back to December 7th, and I'm going to walk in the door, and there's Artie and Grandma sitting by the radio,
Mm-hmm.
listening to Roosevelt about the war.
Mm-hmm.
That was the day Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. On her birthday. Was her birthday. And so Nicky would have probably been around in his teens then, upper teens. Artie was just 15. And he wanted, Nick joined the Navy right away. Everybody went because, first of all, I cannot tell you the difference in living between peace and war. Peace, I never thought of nothing. Everything was always there. It was happy.
Right.
People were together. War, no, it's bad. It is bad. So Nick went off, and then another year, Artie was so insistent, Grandma finally signed a paper for him to join the Navy at the age of 16.
Wow.
And he ended up on a destroyer in the Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
on one of those big guns that shoot airplanes. And it must have been bad. They don't talk about war. I still don't even really know for sure where Nick, although I did find some pictures at a camp which are in the family album.
Mm-hmm.
But Artie's, I only thing I could say about Artie, when he came back, he didn't come right home. He had to go to like a rest home
Mm-hmm.
in Idaho, and he was there a long time.
Like a recovery home?
Yeah. He, and I only heard him, they didn't tell kids a lot of this stuff, but you just heard it,
Yeah.
Kids were seen and not heard. But I heard him telling, somebody said something about what the Japanese did to the American people,
Mm-hmm.
torturing them and stuff.
Oh, man.
And I heard him say, that's nothing compared to what we did to them.
Oh.
Because if a Japanese pilot crashed, they pull him out and then just cut him apart, throw the remains over the other side.
Oh,
That's
my goodness.
what I got the impression of. Not the exact words, but that's... So he had to spend a long time there. And my grandma would sit upstairs by this lamp, writing letters to Artie or Nick during the war. And she'd sit there and cry and write the letters.
Oh.
Or the letters I see, he isn't going to be able to read them. Look at all the water. But it was a hard time for her.
Yeah.
And during the war, everything was rationed. Anything you touched, it was a ration on it. Gasoline. But my father got extra points because he worked in a war-related industry, the railroad. That railroad had to run no matter what.
Yeah.
He got extra gasoline and extra tires. That's two things that were rationed.
Wow.
Food. You had to have food stamps, meat tokens, shoe coupons, all these things. You got one pair of shoes a year.
Everybody had to live this way?
Oh yeah, everybody. Except for people that got stuff on the black market.
Yeah.
There was always, there's always the crooks there. They're making money. But all food, when you cooked, you saved the grease. Now you could use the grease. You either could take it to the butcher shop, and they would weigh it and give you little red tokens in exchange. You could buy meat with it, or you could. And they take this grease to make. Somehow they make ammunition out of it. They have to have that.
Wow.
But Grandma and my mother, they would save theirs up and make soap, lye soap. Down in the basement there, by that time we had moved to Yale. She lived upstairs, we lived downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Artie and Nick sent home enough money to buy that house. House was less than $5,000. The house that Grandma Gullans lived was a beautiful stucco bungalow. They only paid $5,000 right as the war ended.
Wow.
Now they're probably $200,000. But anyways, she lived upstairs, and we were down in the basement there, and I couldn't go down when they were working on the lye soap because lye is very dangerous.
Yeah.
And we had a stove down there, and the big utility sinks,
Mm-hmm.
and they would make boil the lye and however they made it, I don't know. And then they poured in wooden boxes lined with cheesecloth, and then let it sit for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And after about a week or so, they would cut it into bars. And that was my job. My job then came, you had to grate that soap to put it in your laundry. So I'd sit there with the grater and grate the soap.
I can't imagine the soap smelled good. I can't imagine it smelled good.
Oh, yeah, it did. It
Yeah?
did. They still saw it. You ever see anybody selling Grandma's lye soap? That's it.
Oh.
In fact, the other day, Sue and I were at Publix, and they had Fell's Naphtha soap, which is a brown bar about this big.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also, I grated that soap for a laundry. So I bought 2 bars to give one to Sue, because when we were kids, they always said, wash your hair with that, and your hair got fuller. So I'm going to try it. Sue's going to try it. We had chickens in that time, in the war. We could have chickens in the city of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a garage in the back, a little garage, and they fenced off the yard. We had chickens and eggs. And then every now and then they would butcher a bunch of chickens. My grandma, my father, and my mother would go downstairs. I could sit on the stairs and watch. Although before that, Grandma was there alone. I would sit there and hold the chicken while she cut the throat because she liked blood soup. And my father, they never threw hardly anything away.
Yeah.
My dad liked, and I guess that's an old Italian thing, I don't know. But they would gut the chickens, and this sounds disgusting now, but back then it was just part of life.
Yeah.
And they would gut the chickens, they would take all those guts, split them open, clean them, soak them in salt water, and then fry them. He loved that. And my grandma, her favorite part of chicken was when a chicken's laying eggs, there's like a little tape inside of it. It starts out with a little teeny seed, and then it gets bigger and bigger until the egg's ready to.
Yeah.
So you always had this little string of eggs, and she liked those. And so those were, nothing was thrown away that we could use. Nothing.
Wow. And you raised the chickens yourself and everything before you ate them?
Did what?
You raised the chickens yourself before you
Oh,
ate
yeah,
them?
they were back there in the yard. Yep.
They were kids, and you ate them.
Yeah, we did. In fact, funny you bring that up. We had one chicken. She was really a nice chicken. We called her Maisie, because during the wartime there was these movies, Maisie Goes to War and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Propaganda movies. And so we named her Maisie. And then came the time that you couldn't keep chicken. After the war was over, you had to get rid of the chicken. So we just had Maisie. And we knew she had to go, but one day I came home, we had fried chicken. And I said, Ma, it was Maisie. She butchered it and fried her up. Good to the end. Good girl to the end.
Oh.
But yeah, it's different back then. Because, you know, we were talking about the ice. You got to go flip back to a long time ago. Grandma actually would have been around 124th in Michigan, which is totally built up now. She had a farm there with pigs. Grandpa raised pigs. That was before he had the coal and the ice business. And she had a box in the wall where she kept stuff. So they get stuff ready, and they would put it in there. For somebody stole her turkey for Christmas. That's another thing. The bakery shops, on Thanksgiving or Christmas, they didn't close. You took your turkey over in a big square pan. I used to have it on here. It's gone. I don't know where it went. But a big oblong pan, deep. Artie and Nick would take that over to the bakery shop. The night before, they put it in the ovens because the ovens were always going. And everybody did that. You paid them so much to roast your turkey. That way you could bake your bread and stuff in your oven.
Wow.
Now, they close it up because God forbids. Oh, yeah, that was different. And Grandma baked bread. She baked bread. She would bake big loaves of bread. Until the one time, just before Grandpa died, she baked bread in the loaf pan, and you know, it opened up just like a coffin. And it just popped right there and just raised that way.
Oh my.
And she said, somebody's going to die. And my grandpa died. He had diabetes.
Oh.
And he drank beer, a lot of beer. Bad. You know, and then back in those days, there was nothing. You could only control it with your own diet. So my Uncle Chris was my grandma's sister's husband. He had both his legs amputated with diabetes.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a baker. And then Christmas or Thanksgiving, they always had this great big table. That was another thing. You never had to worry about refrigeration a whole lot like we do now.
Really?
They would finish the turkey or whatever and the other food, and they would just take a white tablecloth and put it over there until for everybody coming later. You didn't worry. Now here, in the refrigerator, right quick.
Yeah.
From what your mother says, there's a lot more bacteria going around than there was back then, evidently. I don't know.
It evolves a lot, but... Also, you guys were up north, though, right?
Yeah, that was...
It's different down south with all the humidity and stuff.
Yeah. I doubt it. Well, I don't know.
You're practically
your
a refrigerator.
Your mother said she remembered them doing it, too.
Really?
Just throwing the cloth over it. Yep, she did say that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's...
I think it'd be fine for a day, but anything more than that...
Oh, it was just, a few hours. Like, we ate maybe 1, 2 o'clock, and then for later in the evening.
I think that's still okay. I do that now.
Oh, don't tell your mother.
I won't. Don't let her see this.
Clean the refrigerator. And then Grandma used to make strudel. Oh, strudel was. She was very good at. She'd take a little ball of dough, and we had big dining room tables then, the formal ones, and she put a white sheet over that. She'd start with that little ball of dough and stretch and stretch until it covered that whole table. You could put your hand on it and see your hand.
Oh, wow.
And then she would put apples and raisins and lemon and cinnamon and stuff like that in there and roll it up. Oh, God, it was good. Really flaky. Really flaky.
Does she, like, fold it over a bunch of times so it makes the flaky
No,
texture?
well, she spread the apples out on it, and then she rolled that all up.
Oh.
And then those big sheet pans we have, it would be like a horseshoe in there.
I've always wanted to be able to make it naturally flaky, but I don't know how to do it without buying this stuff, so.
Well, Nancy and I made puff pastry once. That is a big job. Nancy, that was way back in the 50s. You got to start with a lot of butter.
Oh.
Cold. And you put it in the dough, and then you roll it out, fold it over, put it back in the refrigerator, chill it, then roll it out, and keep doing that. And that's what makes your layers, and then you got to see those little hunks of butter in there. She did that. We made pierogies, too. Oh, yeah. I must have gained 10 pounds. Those were good. Yeah. While I lived on Eggleston, or when we lived on Yale, down the street a couple houses, my friend Emily lived there. Her dad, they were Catholic. They went to St. Solomea's Church. Everybody, each nationality had their own church there. And they went to the Polish church, St. Salomea. But they had a carnival on the corner there on 119th and Michigan. And they served pierogies there. That's what reminded me of that. They didn't roll them up and make little pies like they would, because they had a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And they had everything boiling and cooking. It was all the old ladies from the church did it. And they would just have like a big piece of dough, and mostly they do sauerkraut. They don't do the potato and all that. That I had. I don't know what else. They just put the sauerkraut and roll it up and give it to you. Those were really good. Never been able to make a good dough for that. I don't know why.
I'll have to try.
But I got to set pins in throw the ball and knock the things off. They had these little, like cloth, ugly things that you stacked up on little pedestals, and then you get out of the way, and then they would throw baseballs at them and knock them down. If you did, you got a prize. Mr. Eichneich, he took care of that, and Emily and I, we set pins. That was for the church. And he had a nice garden in his backyard. Yeah, lots in Chicago are probably only 40 or so feet wide, but they'll be like 120 deep. So you got your house in the front, and you could put a garage. Most of them backed on a regular alley, and he had his back by the alley. And I remember there used to be an old lady. She'd come walking down the alley, and I think our alley was paved, I'm not sure. But she'd have slippers and an old robe on. And she'd walk down there and talk to him. And he'd give her vegetables and stuff. I'm sure she didn't have anything else. So he always saw that she was taken care of. Behind him lived Mr. Wershing, who, his wife, she died. And Grandma lived, of course, upstairs with us. Well, everybody goes down the alley in Chicago. You don't go down the street, you go down the alley. So she got to talk to Mr. Wershing, and eventually they got married.
Oh.
Yeah. But, they were cleaning the house out. And thank God for my mother. She went down there, look what they're throwing out. And I don't know if you ever seen them, but the jars with ginger, coffee, flour, They're got a blue and white design on them. I gave them to Helen.
Kind of like mason jars, but not?
What?
Are they kind of like mason jars?
No, they're ceramic, white.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I gave them to Helen because we really don't have a place to put them up around here. But they were in the garbage, so my mother grabbed them. Gave them to me. She knew I liked, because I had gone to, well, that's another story, but they got married, and we used to, you had to save cans during the wartime, too. We lived there on Yale. You saved your cans, you flattened them out, got the box full, you took them up to the donation center. So, but people still threw cans out. So the kids would go get cans out of the alley and play kick the can with it. That's the game kids play on the street. So a lady next to us, she was very old at that time, and that was, she had to be from the 1800s, early 1800s. She come out, yell at us kids for using the cans. They're supposed to go to the war effort. And of course, we got them out of the alley, you know. So she made such a fuss about it. The circus was in town, and most of the kids on the block went to the circus. But I didn't know it. They went through the alley and got lots of cans, flattened them all out, put them in the box, put them on their back porch. So she come over to my mother's house. She's right next door. Because she said she was afraid to open the box up. So she got a long stick, because she figured we put a snake or something in it. But it was just cans. When she died, now that Aunt Marvel, Uncle Nick lived in that house then. They cleaned out her attic. Aunt Marvel said she went and grabbed some of it. Old gay 90s dresses, the big hats with all the feathers on it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, they threw a lot of stuff out. Because back then who could ever thought all this would happen? Who would have ever thought?
It was so different, though. You guys were like an actual community and hung out with your neighbors. And
that's right. That is right.
Weird.
You knew. And if you misbehaved down there, that lady could bring you up here and say, your kid did this. And your mother would do something about it.
Wow.
Yes. I worked in a drugstore on 119th and Normal, I think. And I was a sodager. And it's always a bunch of young teenage boys hung around there. And one day, there's one guy, his name was Bose. They call him Bose. I don't know what his name was. His mother comes in. She must have been maybe 5 feet tall. And he's about probably 6. She comes in there shaking her fist at him, grabbed him by the ear and dragged him out because he did not come home for dinner.
Oh, God.
You didn't hesitate back then.
Yeah.
You knew you were going to have to answer to somebody. Yep. That was, that was right across the street from the Normal Theater, which we always went to. You know, the theater only cost, 5 or 6 cents.
Yeah, but that's like almost a loaf of bread then.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
That's another way of looking at it, yep. But that was one thing my mother always thought we could go to the movies sometimes on Saturday because they had the Pearls. Pearls of Pauline or some damn thing on there. Yeah. Yep. That was
You guys always just walked over to the movies and everything?
Yeah, it was just a couple blocks.
Wow. You can't get anywhere around here walking.
That's a problem. That is a big problem. Well, and if you couldn't, it only cost a couple pennies to ride the streetcar, and the streetcar stopped every other block. And the telephone pole in the corner where they stopped usually was painted white or green or some color on the pole, and you could wait there. And streetcars were maybe 10, 15 minutes apart.
Wow.
You never had a problem. And if you had the money, instead of going the streetcar, you go 2 blocks that way and you get on the Illinois Central. That'll take you all the way downtown, although you could go downtown on the streetcar too, but it was slower and longer. You never had a car. You didn't have to have a car. I never drove a car, and my father wouldn't let me touch his car. Well, first of all, it was part of his job.
Yeah.
He had to be ready to go. Even when I was after the war, I was still no car, stay off the phone. Those two things he had to have. And he did end up being a conductor, which I insulted him. One day I always thought the engineer was in charge of the train. No, it's the conductor, and he was the conductor. Now, the conductor, if you ever watch a train, there's a little red box at the end, and that's a computer, and it does all the switching and deciding which car's got to be dropped where. You know, you go on a train, and it stops, and you drop a car off here and there and there. That's the conductor's job. And that caboose was his office.
Oh,
and
wow.
I got that jug there. That's how they carried their water.
Oh. That was his jug?
Yeah. Yeah, he gave that to me. Yeah. He had a lot of stuff. I should have taken more, but, you know, he was married to another woman, and Bobby was there. I didn't want to take nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that was in the 70s, he had cirrhosis of the liver, which could have been started when he was young, I don't know. But many people in my family died from cirrhosis of the liver. Some of them I doubt, like Aunt Josie, I don't believe she drank. I don't believe that.
Wow.
But, and her son Henry, I stopped and seen him probably in around the 90s, 80s or 90s in there. He had cirrhosis of the liver. He worked for the Cook County Police Department there. But, why did I start telling you this? I lost my track. Yeah, the Ramo family. I didn't take anything when he died. Oh, when he died, yeah, that's when I was slim and trim, and I sold real estate. And car hit him on Western Avenue.
Yeah.
Threw him, and he hit his head on a telephone pole.
Oh my goodness.
So he was dead immediately. But that I went to the hearing. They had to have a hearing because accidental death. So Grandpa was in his good suit from work, and I was all dressed up, and I talked to the lawyer, and he said, well, he's wasn't going to be able to get to the hearing. Would I go? And I said, sure. So I took my notepad, and Grandpa in his suit, and me all dressed up, and we walked in there, and I could see everybody, shoulders, tighten up, and I think, oh boy. So we went and sat down, so then everybody else was seated, the judges or whoever they were, and the people that did it were there, and they started asking questions, but the first thing was, who were we? They wanted to know who we were. I said, it's Mr. Felix's daughter, it's my husband, and the lawyer asked me to be here. Well, I look like a sort of law, So it was their fault. I mean, I don't know exactly. I can't remember. It's, a lot of those things go in a blur, but he went to get hamburgers on the bus because he didn't need a car. Of course, he couldn't drive at that time either. Well, he shouldn't have driven. But he just hop on the bus, go down Western, get off, go to the hamburger place, come back home. And he was on his way home, across the street. Boom, got him. So I think that Margaret got a good settlement.
Did the people get arrested or anything?
No, I don't think. I really didn't pay attention to that. It really wasn't. It was an accident.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I should have taken some of the things of his things,
Yeah.
But I didn't. I should have. But, and then this settlement, though, by this time Bobby's in his teens. When he was born, he should not. You should not have babies when you're really old, because they're not healthy. They're just plain not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the stamina of a young woman's children. But he had quite a few medical problems, and then nobody knew how to drive. Margaret didn't know how to drive. Bobby, now they live way out on the outskirts of Blue Island,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no way to get in town that way except, I don't even know if, I'm sure there was a bus that ran away, but so they arranged for a taxi cab to come and pick him up, take him to school every day, and bring him back home.
Wow.
The cab knew that time he had to be there. So he did graduate, but then after my father died, and I think then Margaret got breast cancer, and we did not know that. And we didn't see Bobby, because we lived in Ohio or someplace
Mm-hmm.
at that time. But Uncle Dennis used to stop there, but he would stop on Sunday mornings, bring him the newspaper, see if everything was all right. Well, I think that Margaret made him feel like they didn't need him doing those things. So he quit doing them. And then Uncle Dennis was out on his front lawn there in Blue Island, and Bobby was walking past,
Mm-hmm.
and he asked how his mother was, and she said, "Oh, she died." Nobody ever told us that she was sick or anything.
Oh man.
But so he must have got, because he had a nice piece of property there too.
Mm-hmm.
He had money, and he got married evidently. This is all just hearsay. But that woman took her. She had children, and she took him for all his money, whatever he had. I don't know.
Oh wow.
It was too bad. And he's just a recluse. He doesn't talk to too many people, which is a shame.
Mm-hmm.
He liked Grandpa John, though. He taught him how to play chess. Yeah, he liked him. What else can I tell you? No questions?
No.
How much time we got?
37 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll figure something. I'll go back to my notes. There we go. Took me longer than 30 minutes to write this. Oh, yeah. Yep. After we lived on Yale there during the war,
Mm-hmm.
then Uncle Nick and Artie came home, so then we had to move to another apartment on Lafayette,
Mm-hmm.
which is still only about a couple blocks away.
Yeah.
But then we lived there. It's right across the street from Scanlon School. I want to tell you, these guys are nothing but wusses. All the young kids are wusses. You used to be across the street from us was the playground,
Yeah.
and it had these, what they call them, daddy long legs, just like two long bars. You go up about second floor. That was even with our windows, and you put your leg over one leg and hold on, and you slide down. So there was a few broken legs. They had these other things, like it looked like a ladder with handles,
Mm-hmm.
and one person get in. There was two great big springs, and you go push the other person up, and then you would go flying up.
Oh my goodness.
And then we had the merry-go-round was like a little rope ladder, and you had wooden rungs on it. You hold on there, everybody runs, and you fly up in the air. They don't have that no more. There's just nothing there. They had a playground there that they had a house where the kids could go. And this is the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kids had a place to go and do something. They played baseball and football and all that. During the wintertime, they banked the edges up, and the fire department come out and run water in there and had an ice skating rink.
Oh wow.
And they had inside, on the one end of it, they had like a big sand pile with a roof over it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a man teacher and a woman teacher. Judy and Nancy, my sisters, they would go over there all the time. They learned how to crochet there, how to play the ukulele.
What?
Yeah. And
is this like paid by the community?
Yeah.
What?
Yes. They kept the kids out of trouble.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much money they saved on police?
Yeah.
And then Halloween, my Aunt Marvel, she was a wicked witch, and Judy was the good fairy. And then all the kids in all this neighborhood would be dressed up, and they all go around the block. And they go in there, and then if they were good, they got good candy. And they would have to talk to the witch and to the good fairy. I have a picture of Judy. I think it's in that book of being the good fairy.
Wow.
Yeah. And everybody participated. My mother, there was somewhere, she found a big buggy, and this was before Aunt Marvel was the evil witch. They dressed her up as a baby, put her in a baby buggy, and went around trick-or-treating. Yes, they did. They had they always did something there with the kids, though. They always did.
Wow.
Also, there was a swimming pool in our grammar school. There was a swimming pool in our senior high school.
Wow.
Because I think that had something to do with the fact that Johnny Weissmuller come from that area. Who's Johnny Weissmuller? He was the first Tarzan. He was a gold medal winner at the Olympics for swimming and all that.
Wow.
And we had a swimming pool at the Palmer Park, and then later at Pullman Park. There was always a swimming pool to go to. But they don't do that no more. But then, we used to go we're close to the Indiana line, and we used to go over there swimming. Sometimes my mother would take us. It was like in a natural scoop out of dirt, and it was full of water, but there was a lot of polio around there. So then during that time, that 1 year, the polio was so bad, a lot of kids got polio. We went to Lower Scott Lake, Michigan. Her friend owned a cottage there. It was her parents' cottage, and it hadn't been lived in, or nobody stayed there for many years.
Wow.
So we had to, that was our first job, clean it up. And it was just a roughed in. The walls weren't finished or anything, it was just joists. But it was nice. We stayed there all summer. We had an outhouse there. We had to clean the outhouse. Oh my God. It had an old raccoon coat hanging in there. I can remember my dad bringing that out. They had a fire going, burned it. It was moths all over the place. And then the house, we had a propane or white gas, I don't know what that is, stove to cook on. And he brought us up there, and we had groceries. We were on the far side of the lake near Pullman, Michigan. And we fished. We caught lots of little fish. My mom cleaned them. And then I think it was once a month we'd walk into town through all these woods where there's bears. And they would show movies on the side of a big building in town.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And once in a while we had enough money we could rent a rowboat, and we got around the lake then. Yeah, that was fun that year. But we didn't get polio. But I think that's the year our friend Fred Springy got polio. And you didn't know it. He wasn't feeling good one morning. His mom said, well, just stay in bed. And that's back when the doctors came to the house. And the doctor stopped down, and he checked him. He said, he looks all right. And then he started going out the door, and he said, what? Sit up. But he couldn't move. It was that quick.
My goodness.
So he spent a long time in rehab and an iron lung. Eventually he got onto crutches. But he was very intelligent. He used it the right way. I don't know what he did in California, but he made lots of money. All his kids grew up to be lawyers and doctors.
Wow.
Yeah. He had a greenhouse. He had 5,000 orchids in it.
Oh.
Can you imagine? I can't get one to grow. He was a nice man, though. That was good for him. Yep. And then that was a bad year. So everybody was very careful. And then they came out with the polio, but that wasn't until the 50s then. Because I remember we lived in Garden City, and they were giving the polio shots free in Garden City.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have to sign all these papers and crap back then. So I took I went to the parents. I said, I'm going to go take my kids up. You want? So I took all the kids I could fit in our Volkswagen, which is about 14. I could get 14.
Wow.
So we went up there and I got them all, and they gave it to with a gun-like thing. But my skin was, because I was out in the sun all the time, skin was so tough it would just run down my arm. But they gave me 2 or 3 of them. Yep. But all the kids got them because that's a bad, bad disease.
Yeah.
Bad disease. And now I understand it's coming back again. And people that had polio a long time ago are getting something else now.
Like a residual symptoms, or
I forget. I thought, oh my, now they got to suffer this too.
that's sad.
It's bad. So that was, Roseland was a good place to live back then. There's a website called Remembering Old Roseland. There's so many people from there. It's too bad. It's turned out to be one of the worst neighborhoods.
That's so sad.
They had riots, lots of houses burnt down, people murdered all the time.
Are any of the houses that you lived at over there still in existence?
They're still there. Because you can get on the website and look at them.
Wow.
And they're going for $150,000.
Wow.
But there are a lot of these abandoned ones you get for $0. But you got to
deal with the neighborhood.
Yeah, a lot of gangs. In fact, there was one note on there. Somebody lived on Stewart. Now, we lived on Stewart for a short while.
Mm-hmm.
And next door, there was an empty lot, and then another empty lot, and then a big warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And that man that lived on Stewart somewhere, he didn't say his address, he would let the kids cut through his yard and go up Stewart to the corner store to wait for the bus. Otherwise, they had to go past the gangs.
Yeah.
To that corner store was run by Bill and Joe, the first bat boys for the Cubs.
Really?
Yeah. They were pretty old, but they were there for a long time. Yeah. Yeah, they were pretty nice guys. And it was a nice street to live on. But that's when Artie and Nick bought that other house. Then we moved downstairs and Grandma moved upstairs. That way we could be there to take care of her. So it worked out pretty good.
What year was it you were living there?
Would have been in the 40s. Well, it was after the war started, but before it ended. So probably around 42 or so in there. Yeah. I should put that. I got a list in the front of my big Bible in there of all the places that we have lived. You cannot imagine when you write them down in a list how long they are. Yeah. Because when we left Chicago, we went to Indianapolis. We lived there only for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved to Springfield, Ohio. Then we moved to Detroit, Michigan. Then to Garden City. And then to New Holstein. Then we moved out to Charlesburg. That was just sort of side move. And then back to Cleveland. No. Yep, I think we went to Cleveland. And then out to Menor on the Lake. And then...
Do they not have, like, annual leases there or something? Because you guys seem to be bopping around a lot.
What?
They didn't have, like, leases that were year-long or anything like that?
We always tried to buy, and no, we didn't. The only apartment that we lived in would have been on Santa Rosa in Detroit. There was no lease.
You just kept buying and selling?
Yeah.
Moving? Wow.
Well, we rented in Springfield. That was a nice house. It's a doctor's office.
Oh.
It was, The house already was over 100 years old.
Wow.
And it had windows that went from floor to the ceiling.
Oh.
And it was right on, it was 401 North Plum. It's a highway there to near Wittenberg College. So it was all old type, college type houses.
Mm-hmm.
But the living room, it had the French doors that would have gone into the entrance foyer at the front. That was upstairs. Mr. and Mrs. Ballantine lived upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
We lived downstairs. That was our bedroom. Had a great big brass chandelier, a big brown stone fireplace.
Wow.
From there was 2 doors. You could either go into the living room
Mm-hmm.
or the bedroom for Sue.
Mm-hmm.
Sue's bedroom was normal size. Living room was pretty good size. Had a white marble fireplace with white bookcases and a door going out, a door going into the dining room,
Mm-hmm.
a door going into Sue's room. From Sue's room, you could go through her closet into the bathroom. With doors that was added on later. I'm sure there was no bathrooms when that house was built. Then we had a formal dining room, which I had no, we were just married. We just had minimum furniture.
Yeah.
But when I was in the garage, I'm looking up at the rafters, and there's a dining room set up there.
What?
Yeah. So I asked the lady that owned it, could I use it? And she said, yeah, go ahead.
Wow.
So we took it down. So we had a regular formal dining room with a buffet and the whole thing. It had a maroon carpeting, white wainscot halfway up. And I can remember that wallpaper was old-fashioned ladies and men. It was a French type.
Wow.
That was a pretty room. It was from that room, where you could got in there from Sue's room or from the living room,
Mm-hmm.
you could go out to a side porch or into the bathroom or into the kitchen. The kitchen, house was so old it had a summer kitchen and a winter kitchen. We used the regular kitchen, the all-year kitchen. But from there you went out to the back, and that was the summer kitchen, where they had, because the heat of cooking and all, it kept it away from the house.
That's smart.
Yep. Yeah, and the basement, I only went down there a couple times.
No?
Yeah, and on the workbench there was a sign, Win with Wilkie. It's a lot of old stuff in there. A lot of old stuff. Yep. I liked that house. It was big, it was airy,
Mm-hmm.
but they did make and then it's got, that doctor was smart. It had those side doors, it had an alley which is paved there also. It must be I don't know, but anyways, it's a paved street.
Mm-hmm.
And and then the back is all parking now. I never knew. I did a lot of driving back then and looking around, and I couldn't, there was no black people.
Really?
And John says, oh yes there is. You watch the alley. They walked on the alley. They didn't walk on the street there. This was back in the 50s.
Yeah, but you guys used to walk in the alley all the time, too.
Yeah, that's true, but I walked on the street too.
Yeah.
Also, that's where I worked for WIZE radio station.
Really? What did you do at the radio station?
I was a receptionist and a switchboard operator. I worked with Jonathan Winter's mother. She was in charge of women's programs. That's when they used to have recipes and this and that. And Clay Eager, he was the country western, and I don't like him. He's not a nice man.
No.
No, I was in charge of the record library.
Mm-hmm.
And who would you put Elvis Presley under? I put him under popular. He's country western. He said, who's the bitch that put that in there?
Oh,
well, there's only one person that works on it. That's me. Oh, I looked him up the other day, and all it said was he didn't amount to much. I could believe that. His attitude was bad. Bad. I also, It was like a temporary service. I worked here and there,
Yeah.
and I went to another place that put up the big road signs, you know, the big paper signs on the sides of the roads, the
Like the highway?
billboards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked there for a few weeks while he was on vacation.
Wow.
And I had this lady that babysat. She lived around the corner. She took care of several children. So I go to pick up Sue, and she has them all waiting in a little circle, and she's telling them stories.
Oh.
So that worked out good. But then we got, you work for Collier's Magazine, I think it was, and they went out of business. So then they transferred us to Detroit, where we rented an apartment in Detroit on the second floor. Not good for your grandpa. The stairs weren't good. And that's when we bought the house in Garden City, which is, about 20 miles from there. But he worked at the Ford plant on their computers there. It's amazing. He said it was amazing. He said, you watch all these lines, and here comes a red fender and a green door, and all these different colored parts, and here comes another part, and they all match up at the end.
Wow. I can't imagine seeing something that massive being put together.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Don't worry about it. I got it.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's not running off, so that's good. I have to go. Well, you better shut this thing off now.